It's time for Ms. The Wiz Montalban Fantasy Football Podcast, the best place to go to get all your fantasy football news, analysis, and advice to dominate your league.
Hi, you're listening to Ms. Montalban. I'm here today to bring you the latest signings, injuries, and breaking news. Thank you for joining me. Let's get started. Well, I'd like to start just by saying what happened to the Packers. Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, the New Orleans Saints just shut them down. And I've never seen the Packers look more disinterested or unwilling to be able to play football than I did this first week of the season. Now, I agree with Aaron Rodgers that it's an overreaction. And with the NFL, that's kind of what it is. You know, it's a short season, so week to week, fans overreact about everything. And media. Actually, media overreacts about things more, trying to generate hot takes and stories. But usually, you know, you look for patterns, and once those patterns start to arrive on a week-to-week basis, then you start worrying. So I get what Aaron Rodgers is saying. Like, it's 1 week. Let's see what they do next week. But it's a really bad start. And speaking of bad starts, Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen, man, like, Steelers are a good team, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people pick the Bills to go to the Super Bowl. And, you know, them not being able to move the ball with that offense that they have against the Steelers, and especially at home, definitely raised some eyebrows for me in regards to what type of Bills team is going to, you know, what they're going to look like this season. I think they'll be fine, obviously. Again, it's 1 week. Steelers are a really good defense, a really good team. But if you're a Bills fan or someone that picked the Bills to go far, you know, it definitely gives you some pause after watching them play that first week. And then some crazy games, really crazy games. My biggest takeaway, obviously, with that Raiders-Ravens game, what was that? It was like the Ravens kept letting the Raiders win the game, and the Raiders like, no, we don't want it. You know, Bryan Adams, you thought he scored, and he was short of the goal line. So then you're like, well, they'll just win it over, you know, the next couple plays. And then they didn't. They threw that interception that was bouncing off of everybody's helmets, and then you're like, man, the Raiders are going to lose this. The Ravens are going to march down the field. And they were driving down the field, and then Lamar Jackson fumbled and gave the ball back to the Raiders. And the Raiders were like, you know, forget this. We're just going to kick the field goal, which, you know, then they were about to kick the field goal, and they got the delay of game. And then they're like, oh, no, we're not going to kick the field goal. We're going to actually try to get some yards. And then they throw that bomb to the wide-open Zay Jones, totally burning Marlon Humphrey. So, crazy way to end the first week. You know, 49ers, that's a game to talk about, mostly because their defense they didn't show up like everyone thought they would. They're supposed to have this dominant defense, and the Detroit Lions, who everyone thought was going to be horrible this year, ended up towards the end of the game just kind of putting on a clinic against their defense. So, you know, it's, you know, their offense showed out. Well, the Lions I'm talking about against the 49ers way better than I thought they would. And now I'm kind of worried about the 49ers defense. Maybe they're not as good as what we thought. Jason Verrett's hurt. He's going to be out for the year, which is going to be part of the news. So it's like, what's their secondary going to look like? And are they going to be that defense that we think they're going to be? Raheem Mostert, him getting hurt, had a knee injury. He was out for the rest of the game after 2 carries. So he had 2 carries, 20 yards. He was going to have a really big game, because then you look at Mitchell. He comes in there, 38-yard TD run. Jermichael Hasty gets a touchdown. Like, they got over 140 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that would have been Mostert's touchdowns and carries. So I think it's a big story, for one, because a lot of people picked Mostert in their FanDuel lineups because he had a great matchup, and ended up being disappointed because he got hurt and didn't get to finish the game. And on top of not finishing the game, he was placed on IR, and he's going to miss the rest of the season. So big blow to the 49ers. Like I said, Mostert, great running back, just can't seem to stay healthy. And then after 2 carries gets hurt and is out for the year. And I really feel like this is, a 49er running back issue. They have 800 running backs all the time, and they all can play the running back position pretty well. But first off, the committee, you don't know how they're going to be used. And then secondly, they get hurt all the time. So you don't know if they're going to last the whole game, how banged up they are. It's just a real crapshoot in that backfield, and I kind of want to stay away from that backfield the rest of the season in regards to who's going to get the workload and how Kyle Shanahan's going to use those running backs in that offense. But enough about talking about Week 1. The breaking news is obviously Mostert, Jason Verrett placed on IR, but then they went and signed Kerryon Johnson. So Kerryon Johnson waived by the Eagles earlier, in training camp because of an injury, and now he's making another appearance. He's making an appearance because he's going to be on the practice squad. So he's not signed to the active roster, but it's a step in the right direction. So obviously, if the 49ers develop any more injuries, we might be having a Kerryon Johnson sighting. So that will be interesting, and I definitely felt like mentioning that. Broncos placed wide receiver Jerry Jeudy and cornerback Ronald Darby on the IR. 2 big pieces, one on their offense, one on their defense, and that's a big blow. It actually is better for Jerry Jeudy. It looks like he's only going to miss 4 to 6 weeks or so, when it looked like it could be a season-ending injury, the way his ankle rolled over or got rolled up on. So that's definitely going to push up KJ Hamler and Tim Patrick up on the depth chart, and they're going to get more opportunities, so hopefully they take advantage of it. Giants running back Saquon Barkley was limited, as was tight end Evan Ingram. And this is a Thursday night game, so it's kind of concerning. But they're taking it slow with Saquon Barkley, and that's kind of why I'm not expecting big things from him, even if he plays, because the Giants are playing it smart and really trying to ease the tension, as Billy Madison or Chubbs from Billy Madison Happy Gilmore might say, getting all my Adam Sandler movies mixed up. Anyways, Washington QB Ryan Fitzpatrick was placed on IR. This is significant because I made all my evaluations and all my analysis and, what I thought a lot of the, Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson, what their stats would be based off of Fitzmagic being the quarterback. Now that's going to be Taylor Heineke. I'm not so sold on those projections. I think they're going to dip a little bit. I think Heineke is an okay backup quarterback, and the Washington football team will still be able to move the ball and score, but definitely not at the pace they would have with Fitzmagic. So, Fitzpatrick's going to be out for the first 8 weeks now, it looks like. That's a significant amount of time, and so we'll see how that affects the rest of the Washington squad. But if I have anyone on Washington, that's definitely going to concern me, and I'm going to be a little worried about what that's going to look like in that offense now. Cowboys signed wide receiver Robert Foster to the practice squad, and I mentioned that mostly because people remember him from the Bills. He just got cut from, the Dolphins, I believe. So now he's signed to the Cowboys practice squad. And Kenny Stills of the Saints/Dolphins/Texans, now back with the Saints. He was signed to their practice squad. And then they made a corresponding move by waiving running back Adam Prentice. The Panthers released kicker Ryan Santoso. I don't even know if I pronounced that right. But they got him from the Giants. They traded a draft pick. But I guess they get that draft pick back because that was if he lasted more than 2 weeks, which might explain why he got waived, because he missed an extra point in that game. And now they signed kicker Zane Gonzalez, formerly of the Cardinals. Lions placed cornerback Jeff Fukuda on IR. That's a big blow. The former Ohio State cornerback. He was looking promising for the Lions, and now you got to wonder about that Lions secondary. There wasn't, Amani Amu-Awore, whatever the cornerback from Penn State that they drafted a couple seasons ago. Outside of him, I don't really feel like there's anything there in the secondary, so we'll see how that shakes out. The Ravens released running back Trenton Cannon, and that was, I think, simultaneous with the signing of Latavius Murray. So they signed Latavius Murray. He actually scored a touchdown in that game Monday night, which is crazy to think about, that he just was picked up off the street and runs across the street right into the end zone. But now that's at the expense of Trenton Cannon's job. He'll probably end up on the practice squad. And the Broncos, because of Jerry Jeudy, promoted wide receiver Kendall Hinton to the active roster. And this is significant because he was the quarterback the Broncos had to play last year when they were forced to try to play a game without a quarterback. Kendall Hinton was the guy that attempted to play quarterback. He didn't play it well, and obviously the Broncos lost. Maybe they completed one pass, I think. But now he's back on the active roster. So a lot of good stuff here on the breaking news. A lot of roster shakeup, and that will carry over into week 2. The Burke and Miz Goats of the Week. Here we go. All right, to further recap week 1, we're going into our Goats of the Week, and we're starting off QB, Jared Goff. Detroit Lions quarterback. I never in 1,000 years would have thought I'd be here on week 1 after playing the 49ers saying Jared Goff was a GOAT. But here we are, 38 of 57, 338 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He threw 1 pick and had 3 rushes for 14 yards. And it was an impressive performance. I mean, T.J. Hawkinson had a great day. He was able to hit Quentin Cephas. And I got to say, even with Tyrell Williams doing Tyrell Williams things like getting hurt, as he got hurt again, we'll see what happens with him this week. But I'm kind of impressed with Jared Goff, I got to say. I have him rated as one of the worst quarterbacks on the Lions offense. I didn't think... Well, I kind of, they want to play defense and run the ball, as we've talked about all offseason, but they can't do it because their defense is horrible. They're going to be behind in games, and Jared Goff is going to have to throw the ball more than what we think. And he did here, and he did it well. So I'm not sure. This is part of the reason why I'm not sure what to think about the 49ers secondary, or maybe we're underestimating the Detroit Lions offense. So time will tell on this one, but it's one or the other. So let's see how that shakes out. Number 2, Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City Chiefs against the Browns. 27 for 36, 337 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he had 1 rush for 5 yards, but that happened to be a touchdown as well, so 4 total touchdowns. And it's Patrick Mahomes. I mean, we knew he was going to be here. I actually think I picked him to be one of the stars of the week, if I remember correctly. Actually, let's look back on that. Was he one of the stars of the week? He was. So, I'm obviously going to be excited about that I picked that one. And then the next one is Kyler Murray at the Titans. 21 for 32, 289 yards for 4 touchdowns. He threw a pick, but he rushed 5 times for 20 yards and a touchdown. And he had 2 to DeAndre Hopkins, had 2 to Christian Kirk. Just outstanding day here. And I again had him as one of the stars of the week. So I had 2 out of the 3. And I'd be lying to you if I had 3 out of 3 because there's no way, like I said, that Jared Goff would have been one of my picks. But Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals really came to play against the Titans. And I thought this would be a close game, and Titans were a team that was supposed to be one of the top teams in the AFC. And they look like they have some holes and some issues. So if they don't get that defense fixed, it's going to be a long season for the Titans. And they're not going to be the team that we thought they were going to be. Moving on to the GOATs at the running back position. Number 3, Christian McCaffrey versus the New York Jets. He had 21 rushes for 98 yards, and he caught all 9 of his targets for 89 yards. And here's the thing. For one, week 1 was kind of a dud for running backs in general. There wasn't any. There weren't too many running backs that had really big days. But on top of that, it just shows Christian McCaffrey can be a top running back in a week without even scoring a touchdown. He had no touchdowns, and he almost had 200 yards total offense, and he's the number 3 overall in regards to fantasy football points. So it just shows you what a beast Christian McCaffrey is, and he's capable of doing this without scoring a touchdown, getting enough yards that he's a top play of the week. Number 2, Nick Chubb for the Browns. They were, at the Chiefs in that losing effort, but he rushed the ball 15 times for 83 yards, scored twice. He did lose a fumble, but he also had 2 catches on 2 targets for 18 yards. And that's impressive because Nick Chubb's not much of a receiving running back, if at all. So, 18 yards is not a lot, but I'll take it because Nick Chubb is usually 0. And those 2 touchdowns on the ground really catapulted him to the number 2 spot. And then number 1 at the running back position was Joe Mixon versus the Vikings. 29 rushes, 127 yards, and a touchdown. And then he was targeted 4 times and had 4 catches for 23 yards. So Joe Mixon, great week. And Burke will be happy because we had the debate, Chris Carson or Joe Mixon, who was going to be relevant or stay healthy. And, Joe Mixon right out of the gate gets the number 1 GOAT of the week. So good for him. All right, number 3 GOAT of the week, Deebo Samuel, 49ers against the Lions. And at receiver, there wasn't too much that Deebo didn't do. And it was crazy because everyone was expecting Brandon Ayuk to have a big game. And instead, it goes to Deebo. He was targeted 12 times. So he had 9 catches for 189 yards, 1 touchdown. Now, he did have the fumble loss. And when you lose a fumble, his day could have been even bigger. But yeah, him being targeted 12 times and Brandon Ayuk, well, we'll get to that later. But big day for Samuel and in the victory against the Lions. Our GOAT of the week at wide receiver, number 2, Amari Cooper, Dallas Cowboys receiver, on that Thursday night opening game against the Buccaneers. He was targeted 16 times. Now, 16 times is just insane to me. He had 13 catches for 139 yards, 2 touchdowns, and it just doesn't get any better for that. And Amari Cooper is doing Amari Cooper things. So I had him ranked as the 15th overall receiver for the year, and he's off to a good start. He might actually be higher than that if they keep using him like they did this first week. Our number 1 GOAT of the week was our number 1 overall receiver last year. He's just continuing the domination. Tyreek Hill, Chiefs wide receiver, versus the Browns. He was targeted 15 times, had 11 catches for 197 yards, 1 touchdown, had 1 rush for 4 yards. So Tyreek Hill, man, I got to tell you, he's just he's one of the best, and he's not going to be knocked off the throne very easily with a start like this. At tight end, our GOAT of the week, number 3 GOAT of the week, Darren Waller, Raiders against the Ravens. He was targeted 19 times. 19 times as a tight end. And I don't know if that's because the Raiders' receivers aren't very good and Derek Carr has no one to throw to on the outside, or if Darren Waller is just that much of a beast that you can target him 19 times in a game. And I think it's a little bit of both. I don't want to take anything away from Waller, and I have no problem taking things away from those receivers until they prove that they can be productive. But 10 catches, 105 yards, 1 touchdown. Just great game by him, and it was all in a winning effort against those Ravens. So, number 2, and this gentleman seems to just sit in those top 3 every single week, but it's Travis Kelce, Chiefs tight end, versus the Browns. He was targeted 7 times, had 6 catches for 76 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, really good week. And then our number 1 goat of the week at tight end was that Thursday night game again. It was Rob Gronkowski. And Gronk just did his Gronk smash on the Cowboys. Caught all 8 of his targets, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns. So we thought there might be a regression here with Gronkowski. And somebody forgot to tell Gronkowski and Brady because he had a dominant performance. And there was very few dominant tight end performances this week. And really outside of those 3, there wasn't too many worth talking about. But kudos to all those guys. They really came out ahead. And actually all of them were in winning efforts. So that will wrap up our GOAT segment. Burke and Ms. the Wiz Montalban, Ghosts of the Week. Let's get this started. Well, let's get into the ghosts. These are all the people that we thought were going to have monster weeks, and their performance turned out to be very scary and really hurt our fantasy football teams. So I will get started. Number 3 at quarterback, Matt Ryan, Eagles or Falcons quarterback versus the Eagles. Now he was at home, and I mentioned this in the preview that Falcons usually play decent at home, but not in this one. I mean, the Eagles just pulverized them. 21 of 35, only had 164 yards passing, 0 touchdowns. He had 2 rushes for 8 yards, and just really bad performance by Matt Ryan, and a definite losing effort. Number 2, Ghosts of the Week, Chicago Bears quarterback Andy Dalton at the Los Angeles Rams. And I don't think anyone expected Andy Dalton to do anything, but I mean, I think he played so bad that there's legitimate reason for fans to have a mutiny at the Soldier Field to get Justin Fields onto the fields. Dalton was 27 for 38, 206 yards, threw an interception, and then he only ran the ball twice for 13 yards, but then also lost a fumble. So 2 turnovers, 0 touchdowns. That doesn't win you games, and that was a really bad performance this week by Andy Dalton. And then our number 1 we've kind of already talked about. It's none other than Aaron Rodgers. Packers quarterback against the Saints, 15 for 28 for 133 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. It was the opposite of a good performance. It was a horrible performance by Aaron Rodgers. And, a lot of people played him in their FanDuel lineups thinking, against the Saints was going to have a great matchup, and he didn't. So, moving on to running back Ghosts of the Week. We've already talked about this as well. But I usually don't put people on here because of injury, but with Raheem Mostert, I put him on here. He had 2 rushes for 20 yards, was looking really good, and then that injury really put a damper on a lot of people's fantasy football teams and for their FanDuel lineups. He was a big play this week, and him getting hurt just kind of killed a lot of that vibe, especially right off the bat. So, you get excited about week 1, and then it's just crushed by that injury. And that's the way football goes sometimes. He was off to a great start, was going to have a monster game, and just got hurt. Number 2, Rams running back Sony Michel. A lot of people put him in their lineups thinking that he was going to maybe be the back of choice for Sean McVay, and that was not the case. He had 1 rush for 2 yards against the Bears and was never to be seen again after that rush. And then number 1 ghost of the week was Ronald Jones versus the Cowboys. He had 4 rushes for 14 yards. Then, he had that fumble loss that the Cowboys were able to capitalize on, and he was nowhere to be seen again. But the crazy thing is Bruce Arians just announced that Ronald Jones is going to be the starter for week 2, and he was going to get a lot of action. I don't ever trust what Bruce Arians says. He can say that, and then, it'll be more Leonard Fournette and Giovanni Bernard. But it is interesting that he said that. Wide receiver ghost of the week. Number 3 is Marquez Callaway. And I put him on here because, that Saints receiver was getting a lot of preseason hype, was a sleeper pick for many. Everyone was expecting a big day from him, and he had 2 targets and 1 catch for 14 yards. So didn't quite pan out. And despite, the Saints dominating, and I think that was kind of a product of just the Saints dominating the game. They had a big lead. Packers had to play catch up. There wasn't a big need for the Saints to pass the ball that much, and Jameis Winston was so efficient that, he threw for 4 touchdowns, even for, a meager, 158 yards or so. So, really didn't need Marquez Callaway in this one to win. Number 2 is wide receiver Courtland Sutton at the New York Giants. He was targeted 3 times, but only had 1 catch for 14 yards. That's definitely something you don't want to see. Courtland Sutton's a great receiver, and everyone was excited that he was back from injury, and he was going to take his throne again as the number 1 receiver with, a big season. And he didn't, start off with the start that we wanted to see. And then number 1 wide receiver ghost of the week. We've already talked about Debo, so I will talk more about Brandon Ayuk. He wasn't targeted, didn't have a catch, didn't have any yards. And that was really disappointing because he was a big play for a lot of people with that kind of matchup. And all the glory went to Debo. So, Brandon Ayuk, you're number 1 ghost of the week for us at receiver. And then tight end, number 3 ghost of the week was Mark Andrews against the Raiders. On one side you saw Darren Waller be a GOAT and dominate, and then you saw Mark Andrews drop some balls. He was targeted 5 times, had 3 catches for 20 yards, and I'm getting kind of concerned about Mark Andrews. He had that big season. He had a big season last year too, but he has potential to be more than I think what he's showing. And he just drops a lot of balls, and then, it feels like Lamar Jackson's just doing things himself in that Ravens offense, or at least trying to do everything in that Ravens offense. And, when he gets the opportunity, I think Mark Andrews needs to help out, and he just doesn't do that. So, number 2 ghost of the week is Dan Arnold, Panthers tight end versus the Jets. Targeted 3 times, had 2 catches for 6 yards. And he was a hot commodity this week. The Jets are horrible at defending the tight end. At least they were last year. This is a new season, so maybe the Jets are turning the page. But, Dan Arnold got a lot of hype this week about being a good play, and it didn't happen. I mean, I even named part of my segment the last segment, after him with the Darnold to Arnold. But it didn't happen, and Dan Arnold disappointed. Then the number 1 ghost of the week is Mike Gesicki, Dolphins tight end at the Patriots. And this is no surprise because I wasn't big on Gesicki with Tua Tagovailoa being the quarterback. Gesicki didn't have really great games with Tua, and that just continues against the Patriots. He was targeted 2 times, had 0 catches, 0 yards, and as one of the top 12 tight ends in fantasy that you're drafting, you expected more from him, and you could have put, a scarecrow or a crash test dummy in your lineup and gotten as many points as Mike Gesicki. So Mike Gesicki made you sick, and he got you 0 points. So that does it for the Ghost of the Week, and we'll end this segment like it started with a big boo for everyone that ended up being on this list. It's Burke and Mrs. Pickups of the Week. Let's get started. Here's the fun part of our show. This is the pickup segment where we make your fantasy football team better. And we're going to make it better today. Quarterback, 3 pickups. I have Tyrod Taylor for the Texans, Sam Darnold for the Panthers, and of course, number 1, cat's out of the bag, Jameis Winston for the Saints. Tyrod Taylor, I like his rushing ability. They're going to be behind in games quite a bit this season because I don't think the Texans are very good. And so that will force, a lot of passing yards, a lot of garbage time points. And I think it's worth a pickup at this point in time. Sam Darnold, just like his weapons around him, I think he's going to be a pretty efficient quarterback in this offense and be, score enough to be a good fill-in quarterback or at least a backup. And then you got Jameis Winston, who actually could be better than your starter. He was named the starter beginning of the season. When he's in there, he plays, he passes for a lot of yards, gets a lot of touchdowns. He's prone to the mistakes, of course, but there's no reason why he should be on anyone's waiver wire. So if he's there, you need to grab him, make your team better. Running back, my number 3 running back is Tony Jones Jr. for the Saints. And I liked him before the season. As soon as they cut Latavius Murray, it was on for Tony Jones. But then actually watching the usage that they had for him, he really did replace Latavius Murray in that role. So Tony Jones is available in almost every single league, and I think he's worth a pickup if you're desperate at running back. Number 2 running back is Mark Ingram II for the Texans. He's, scored a couple touchdowns. He was their main target or workhorse in the backfield, and that was surprising because he was always a guy I forgot about, Not that I forgot about him, but I didn't mention him as much. It was like Philip Lindsay, David Johnson, what's going to happen? And here comes Mark Ingram creeping out of the fog, getting most of the carries that first week. So I definitely think he's worth having on your roster. A running back that's going to get that type of workload and be able to have the opportunity to score that many touchdowns in a game. He needs to be rostered. So he's my number 2. And then, of course, my number 1 is Elijah Mitchell for the 49ers. Elijah had a great first week of the season. That would have been Raheem Mostert's. I'm not dumb. I get it. It's heartbreaking to watch Elijah Mitchell run the ball that first week when you know that could have been Mostert's. But I like Elijah Mitchell a lot, and I liked him a lot when he was drafted by the Niners. I liked him coming out of Louisiana. And I was actually disappointed he went to the Niners because I didn't think he was going to make the team with the running back depth that they had there. They already drafted Trey Sermon, and then they get Elijah Mitchell. And I'm like, man, I like that guy. And now he's, maybe he'll make the practice squad. Well, here he is after the first week of the season being their main running back and having a really nice game. Having said that, though, you're going to pick him up. He's going to be your number 1 waiver priority. This is Kyle Shanahan offense. They're still going to use Trey Sermon. They're still going to use JaMychal Hasty. It's still going to be a running back by committee type thing, and you're still going to be guessing on who's going to get the workload and carry. So having said that, I like Mitchell a lot. You need to pick him up, but he's not the slam dunk replacement for Mostert that you think he is. Moving to wide receiver. Number 3, I have KJ Hamler for the Broncos, and I like this pickup a lot. Jerry Jeudy is hurt. He's not going to be playing for a significant amount of time. So Tim Patrick is going to be that outside receiver, and then you have KJ Hamler just in the slot, just working that in the middle of the field. And he does such a great job there. He's a great playmaker, so I definitely think he's worth an add, and you need to be picking him up. Terrace Marshall Jr. for the Panthers is my second. And I put him on here. He didn't have a great week 1, but he had a lot of targets. And where he's at in that middle of the field, Sam Darnold's going to be using him a lot. And he's one of those guys I think will start ramping it up, getting more targets as the season goes along, and really be a key weapon for this Panthers offense. I felt like just the way the game went against the Jets, that it wasn't really required that he be as much involved in the offense. But, it's hard to get a read on the Panthers and how good they're going to be this year. But I think between Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, and Terrace Marshall Jr., that there's going to be a lot of room for Marshall working underneath and getting a lot of those passing targets. So he needs to be your number 2, especially with how much he was good. He was in like 82% of the plays. So a receiver that's involved in the offense that much needs to be owned at this point. And then my number 1 is Jalen Reagor for the Eagles. Everyone was talking about Devonta Smith, and I get it. He was the rookie, the Heisman Trophy winner, so everyone was excited about him. But Jalen Reagor, he got hurt last year, and I think that kind of took his potential away last season. Well, now he's back healthy, and the Eagles need, they have more than one receiver. And Reagor got a ton of targets week 1. He scored a touchdown. He's an effective receiver. So not everything is going to go to Devonta Smith or the tight ends. I think if Reagor's available on your waiver wire, you need to pick him up because he's going to be a receiver that's going to be relevant and get you those yards and touchdowns. So moving along to tight end, this one was kind of cut and dry. Juwan Johnson's my number 3. He got those 2 touchdowns, and everyone's like, "Why don't you make him number 1?" He had the breakout game, maybe the breakout player of all of week 1. There was some hype, obviously, in circles around New Orleans about him, and they were right. My issue with it, though, is Adam Troutman's still there. He's still getting majority of the snaps, so I don't think it's a thing where you can have those expectations that he's going to be that main guy there every week. And it could be one of those things where he has a good first week, and not that he just disappears, but he doesn't reach that production again with the amount of targets that he can get. But he's definitely a great goal line threat. So if anything, I think those limited targets will be by the goal line, and that makes him relevant for fantasy football. Because when you're using tight ends, you just hope they get a touchdown. That's all you're hoping for, because it's so hit or miss with the tight end position in fantasy football. Then number 2 is Cole Kmet for the Bears. I think a lot of people didn't draft him because they're worried about Jimmy Graham being there and what that, receiving, how many targets he was going to get and what that would look like. And that first week kind of put that to rest, really put me at ease in regards to how they're going to use him. He's going to be the main guy there for the Bears. I like, he's out there most of the time. He's getting the passing targets. So Cole Kmet's definitely worth a pickup, and you can get him off the waiver wire with confidence that you're going to get a guy that's going to be productive on your fantasy lineup. And then number 1 is the sleeper pick, Gerald Everett for the Seahawks. He had a touchdown and, only like 20-something yards. But the big issue with Gerald Everett was Russell Wilson threw him the ball. And Russell Wilson likes to throw the tight ends in the red zone especially, but it was always kind of like a 3-headed monster between Olsen, Hollister, and Disley. Well, now it's just Disley and Everett. And Everett did this against one of the top teams that defended the tight end in the Indianapolis Colts. And if he's able to do it against one of those top teams, I'm excited for the future and what he can do against these other teams. I think you need to own him. And I know a lot of people will be scrambling for tight ends because they're one of those ones where, they have a hot week and you go pick them up and then maybe they have a couple weeks where they're not doing anything. So then you want that next tight end that's having a couple hot weeks, and it's like a revolving door of tight ends and just trying to chase the hot streaks in them. But I think you can plug in Gerald Everett and put him in there on a week-to-week basis and get pretty good results that will be, will be with matchups that will help you win at the tight end position on your fantasy football team. So there you go. There's the pickups of the week. Use them, like them, and let's see how they work out for you. NFL Preview Alert.
Let the games begin.
All right, our Thursday night preview. This is going to be a game that, I'm not that excited about it. New York Giants at the Washington football team. Minus Ryan Fitzmagic. Just not that excited about it. The Washington football team's favored by 3 points. So, give me Washington. I'll give up the 3 points to the Giants. I think Washington, with that defense, beats them by more than that. The over-under is 40.5. And I'm going with the under. I like Washington's defense. And with Taylor Heineke being the quarterback, I don't know what to expect from Washington. So I'm going under 40.5. I was going to go over because that's such a low total score margin, but I think it's going to be like Washington football team, winning like 31 to like 3 or something, 27 to 10 or something like that. So I'm starting Taylor Heineke. I think he will be decent enough that he can be a starter. Antonio Gibson, I just think he's going to have a really good day and run roughshod over this Giants defense. I think he can have a really big day. So I'm all about Antonio Gibson in this one. I think he's going to be the best player in this game and get he could get a touchdown, maybe 2, get a lot of yards on the ground. I like Gibson in this one. J.D. McKissick, I like him as a receiver. He kind of had a dud week 1, and that made everyone say that he's someone that you should probably drop this week. I think he rebounds a little bit, and is especially with Taylor Heineke, he's going to be checking down a lot. And McKissick's such a reliable receiver, so I think he's relevant. Terry McLaurin, Diami Brown, I kind of built Diami Brown up last week. He didn't do anything. So I'm doubling down, building him up again. I think he has a pretty good week this week. And obviously McLaurin will as well. And then Logan Thomas, the tight end. He did, he had a touchdown and some yards week 1. And I just think that continues this week, that he'll be a reliable, steady tight end that will get you the points you need to maybe not win you your week, but not hurt you in your week this week. So Adam Humphries, I have him on the bench. He's probably the only Washington person I have on the bench. And, just remind me the last time Adam Humphries was relevant outside of wearing a Tampa Bay Buccaneers jersey. He hasn't done anything for the Titans. He hasn't done anything yet for the Washington football team. And I get it's only been 1 week, but until he shows me something in a different uniform, I'm having him on my bench. Even with the injury to Curtis Samuel, since Curtis Samuel's on IR, you're like, wow, maybe Adam Humphries will, finally show me something. I will believe it when I see it. So for the Giants, I'm not really. I'm starting Sterling Shepard and Kenny Golladay, and I don't think they're both simultaneously going to have a good week. But one of these receivers are going to have a pretty good sneaky week, and I'm actually leaning more towards Shepard than Golladay, but I'm putting them both up on the start list. Sitting Daniel Jones, he just turns the ball over too much. Those injuries are costly. He's played a good defense with the Broncos against the Broncos week 1. Now he's playing against a good defense with the Washington football team. I don't like this matchup at all. I'm staying away from Daniel Jones. And then Saquon Barkley, I hate to put him on the sit list, but when you're on the sit list, you're on the sit list. And with Saquon Barkley, they're trying to ease him back in. He's not getting as much volume as he normally does, and he's still working his way back from that injury. So it didn't surprise me. He had a lousy week 1, and I wouldn't surprise me if he has kind of a down week 2 as well, until they ramp him back up to full speed. Evan Ingram, he missed week 1 with an injury. He's it's a short time frame to recover for week 2. I don't know if he does it, so I'm sitting him. And then Darius Slayton, for obvious reasons, I just don't think that with Galladay and Shepard that Slayton will be relevant in this one. So we will see. I'm, again, thinking Washington football team will win this one. And get the second win in the NFC East, aside from the Eagles in week 1. So we will see. It should be a good game, and I definitely will be watching it. So we'll talk about it on our next podcast. Woo-wee! Week 1 is in the books. The hay's in the barn. And now it's time to move on to week 2. And if it's anything like week 1, we're going to have even more to talk about. So thanks for joining us. This is Ms. The Wiz Montalban on the Ms. The Wiz Montalban Fantasy Football Podcast. We'll catch you in a couple days to preview all of week 2's games. And in the meantime, cheers.